It was a quiet Sunday morning in early October, the kind that used to mean banana pancakes, laundry on the line, and a few minutes of peace before another relentless week. But that morning, I heard the knock long before I reached the door, sharp, demanding, like someone owed them something. When I opened it, my mother Evelyn stood there with her favorite full-leather purse clutched against her chest, and Marcus, my brother, behind her with that same smug slouch he always had when he thought he was about to get what he wanted. "We need to talk," she said without a greeting. Her tone wasn't maternal, it was managerial. They didn't even take off their coats before walking in. I didn't offer coffee. Marcus made himself at home on my couch like he'd earned the right, while Evelyn walked slowly around the living room, eyeing the furniture like she was cataloging what she might sell off if I didn't comply. "I'll get to the point," she said. "Marcus has a new business opportunity." I didn't sit down. "The last one failed 3 months ago." "This one's different," Marcus cut in. "It's more scalable." "You said that about the meal kit startup," I replied, "and the crypto app, and the vintage car import business." Evelyn waved a dismissive hand. "Naomi, he's your brother. This isn't about success. It's about family." I felt the old tension knot behind my ribs, that familiar tightening I hadn't missed. "What exactly do you want?" Evelyn straightened her shoulders. "We need $80,000 to get it off the ground. And don't act like you can't afford it. We saw the hospital's annual report. We know what your bonus was." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "You went through my company's financials." "We raised you," she snapped. "We're entitled to know what you're doing with the life we gave you." I stared at her, trying to find the mother I used to imagine I had, and not the woman now standing in my living room making a legal case for emotional blackmail. "No," I said simply. "I'm not giving you the money." Marcus shifted on the couch, his mouth tightening. "Wow. So now you think you're too good for us?" "No," I replied, voice low. "I've just finally realized I've always been better without you." That did it. Evelyn's face froze. She stepped forward until she was inches from me. "You're ungrateful. If it weren't for this family, you'd be nothing." I didn't flinch. "Funny. I thought that's what you wanted me to believe." Silence stretched. Then she spat the words like venom. "If you won't help your brother, then you're no daughter of mine." My chest tightened, not because it hurt, but because I'd heard that sentence before years ago when I was 12 and refused to take the blame for Marcus stealing from the church donation box. Back then, I cried in my room for hours. Now, I opened the door and pointed at it. "You can leave now." Evelyn didn't move. "You'll regret this," she said. "Blood is blood." I didn't answer. She looked at Marcus, who scoffed under his breath, and followed her out, pausing only to mutter, "Hope that couch was worth it." The door clicked shut behind them. I stood still for a long moment, listening to the silence press in around me, the sound of my own breathing, the hum of the refrigerator, the gentle creak of the heating system kicking in. It was all louder than anything either of them had ever said in support of me. I thought that was the end of it. But 3 days later, I'd find out it was only the beginning. It was a Wednesday morning when it happened, October 11th. I remember the date because we had our quarterly audit review at the hospital, and I had been up late the night before triple-checking the budget forecasts. I'd just walked into the main lobby, coffee in one hand and a binder in the other, when Marcy from the front desk called out softly, "Naomi, someone's here for you." I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. She gestured nervously toward a tall man in a gray suit standing by the entrance, holding a manila envelope. He looked like the kind of person who called himself counsel instead of lawyer. "You miss Naomi Ellsworth?" he asked. "Yes." He handed me the envelope and recited the words like a script. "You've been served." At first, I didn't understand. I took the envelope, and everything went quiet. I couldn't hear Marcy anymore. Couldn't feel the coffee warming my fingers. I walked straight to the break room and sat down, barely noticing the sound of the refrigerator humming beside me. The fluorescent light above buzzed faintly as I tore the envelope open. Petition for conservatorship. Filed by Evelyn Ellsworth and Marcus Ellsworth. Grounds: mental instability, emotional volatility, and financial recklessness. I read it once, then again. By the third read, I still couldn't breathe. They weren't just after my money. They were after me. I sat there, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. It felt surreal, like something that happened to someone else, someone unhinged. But then I saw the part that made my stomach drop. Immediate motion filed for temporary financial control of all accounts held in Naomi Ellsworth's name. They were trying to take my autonomy, not just metaphorically, legally. By noon, I'd closed my office door and turned off the lights. I canceled the afternoon meetings. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the old black flash drive from the bottom of my desk drawer. It was scratched and worn, but it still worked. 10 years of records, audio files, voicemails, screenshots, bank statements, text messages. I had named the folders by year, and within them I had incidents marked with timestamps. I didn't know why I started keeping them. Maybe I always knew one day I'd need proof that I wasn't the one losing my mind. I opened a folder labeled 2014 Thanksgiving. Inside was a voice memo I'd recorded on my phone during dinner. Evelyn's voice. If you ever speak to your brother like that again, I'll make sure no one at this table remembers your name. Marcus's voice slurring. She's always been dramatic. Maybe she should be on meds. My own voice. Too quiet to fight back. I didn't do anything. I played it twice, then moved on. Folder. 2018 Marcus loan threat. Text message at 2:16 a.m. Marcus. If you don't wire me $3,000 by tomorrow, I swear to God, I'll make sure Mom calls HR and tells them you're having breakdowns again. Me. What are you talking about? Marcus. Think of it as family debt. I leaned back in my chair. My throat felt raw, even though I hadn't spoken a word. The worst part wasn't that they thought I was unstable. It was that they needed me to be. That night I called Jonah. Jonah Patel, my best friend from college. Former debate partner. The only person who had seen me break and rebuild. He answered on the second ring. Naomi? What's wrong? They're trying to declare me unfit, I said. They want control of everything. There was a pause. Then, tell me you kept records. I did, I whispered. And I think it's time I used them. He didn't ask questions. He just said, I'll be over in 20 minutes. I hung up and stared at the court papers one more time. Evelyn's signature at the bottom. Elegant. Familiar. She hadn't called me in months. Hadn't once congratulated me on my promotion. Never visited this apartment. But now she wanted legal power over every decision I made. I thought about the way she used to say, You're too emotional. You always have been. It wasn't concern. It was a weapon. I opened my laptop and renamed a folder. Exhibit of the Truth. And just like that, I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. That night, I couldn't sleep. Even with Jonah asleep on the pull-out couch and my front door locked with 3 bolts, my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, watching its slow, unbothered rotation. And somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning, the past began clawing its way back in. It started with a memory I hadn't visited in years. I was 16. It was the fall of junior year, and I had just received the acceptance letter to the state science competition. A big deal for kids like me. Full ride scholarships often came from winning those. But that same week, Marcus got suspended for skipping school 3 times in a row and crashing Dad's truck into a stop sign. My parents were furious, not at him, of course, but at the embarrassment. Evelyn sat me down at the dining table one night with her usual glass of wine in hand and said, Maybe it's not the right time for you to be gallivanting around with science projects. Your brother's going through something. I said nothing. She continued, It would mean a lot if you passed on the competition. We can't afford the travel costs anyway, and we need to keep things calm in the house. You understand, don't you?" Of course I did. I always understood, too well. I withdrew from the competition that night. No one ever asked how it made me feel. Marcus didn't even say thank you, but he did brag 2 days later that he got to keep the truck, because I handled it like a man. Then there was college. At 18, I got into CU Boulder on merit, but needed help covering housing my first year. I went to my father, Frank, with a written budget, a 5-year plan, and a copy of my scholarship letter. He didn't even glance at them. "We're stretched thin," he said. "Maybe next semester." 3 weeks later, Marcus got a brand new Mustang with dealer plates still on it. When I confronted Evelyn, she replied, he needed something to boost his confidence. "And you? You're smart. You'll figure it out." So I did. I got a 3rd job that semester scrubbing floors at the hospital I now help run. I skipped meals. I took the late-night bus. I learned to survive the way kids like me always do, quietly. And then there was the family trust. I was 25, sitting in the living room during Christmas, sipping cider, pretending to belong. I overheard Marcus joking to his girlfriend about how Mom made sure I'd never have to work if I didn't want to. I thought he was bluffing until I found the old envelope labeled Ellsworth Family Financial Planning in Evelyn's desk drawer later that night. It had charts, names, projections, legal signatures. Only one beneficiary, Marcus Ellsworth. Nothing about me. I remember staring at the paper until the edges blurred, then folding it neatly and tucking it back like it had never been touched. That was the night I stopped trying to earn their love. The hum of the city outside my window brought me back. I blinked up at the ceiling, no longer 16 or 25, no longer confused or hopeful, just tired, but awake. They didn't just play favorites. They weaponized the family name. And now they wanted to take everything I'd built away from me. I sat up slowly, feet touching the cold wooden floor, and whispered into the dark, "I am not who they say I am, comma." 2 days after the court papers arrived, I started digging into things I hadn't touched in years. Old folders on hard drives, saved voicemails, and finally, buried deep in a box of my mother's forgotten things, a photo album she left behind when she moved last spring. I was flipping through it on instinct, not expecting anything useful. But then I saw it, a faded photo tucked between pages, not labeled like the others. My mother stood stiffly in the picture, her smile forced. Next to her, a woman with thick auburn curls and sharp, intelligent eyes smiled like she had nothing to prove. She looked familiar in a way that made my skin prickle. I turned the photo over. Faded blue ink in elegant cursive red. "Claudia, don't tell Frank." I froze. Claudia. The name had been mentioned exactly once in my childhood, when I was maybe 9. I'd asked about the photo on the mantel that suddenly disappeared. My mom's voice had turned cold as she said, "She's not around anymore." I never asked again, but I remembered her eyes. Now, staring at that photo again, I realized they were my eyes too. I Googled Claudia Mercer, with her birth year and city. Within 5 minutes, I found it, Mercer and Associates Family Law and Estate Planning. The website listed Claudia Mercer as a founding partner, based in Georgetown, D.C. The woman in the bio photo had silver white hair pulled into a tight bun, a tailored navy suit, and those unmistakable eyes. I booked the first flight out the next morning. The law office sat in a historic red brick townhouse just off M Street in Georgetown. A brass plaque glinted in the sunlight, "Claudia Mercer, attorney at law." My palms were sweating as I walked through the front door. The receptionist looked up. She couldn't have been older than 25. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, "but I need to speak with Ms. Mercer. My name is Naomi Ellsworth. I think I'm her niece." The receptionist blinked, confused. Then, without a word, disappeared behind the frosted glass door. 3 minutes later, that same door swung open. A woman stepped out, tall, composed, dressed in tweed with a faint scent of cedarwood. She looked at me for less than 5 seconds and said, "Naomi." I nodded, suddenly unsure if I was shaking from nerves or cold. She opened the door wider. "Come in." Her office smelled like old leather and books. Heavy volumes lined the walls, and not a single piece of clutter on the desk. Claudia Mercer was all precision and presence. She didn't sit until I did. I placed the photo on her desk. "I found this in my mom's storage box," I said. "She told me you were dead." Claudia stared at the photo. Her jaw tensed. "She would," she muttered. "Your mother was always more comfortable rewriting the past than facing it." I reached into my bag and pulled out the court petition. "She and my brother are trying to declare me legally unfit. I think you're the only person who's ever been erased by her like I'm being erased now." Claudia scanned the documents. Her eyes sharpened. "You have evidence." I opened my laptop. 20 minutes of voicemails, text messages, emails, all documented, labeled archived. Threats from Marcus, gaslighting from Evelyn, audio recordings from family dinners that never ended well. Claudia said nothing for a long time. Then she closed the laptop with one hand and said, "I'll take the case." My breath caught. You will." She leaned back. "I won't let her do to you what she tried to do to me." Tears pricked the corner of my eyes. "But Naomi," she said, voice firmer now, "if we do this, there's no turning back. Are you ready for that?" I met her gaze. "They came for me first. Now it's my turn." That night, in the silence of my hotel room, I got her first email, a draft response to the petition, plus a short personal note. "They trained you to be their weapon. They never imagined you'd point it back at them. Let's remind them who you are." The hearing was scheduled for Tuesday, October 17th, exactly 12 days after the petition was filed. Just under 2 weeks, since my life had been flipped upside down by the very people who were supposed to protect it. I arrived early, too early, wearing a navy blue blazer I hadn't touched since my last hospital board presentation. Claudia met me at the courthouse steps, her presence a steady anchor in the early morning fog. "You ready for this?" she asked, adjusting the thin file under her arm. "I've been ready my whole life," I replied. Inside, the courtroom smelled like varnished wood and tension, the kind of room where people lost custody, dignity, and sometimes entire legacies. Claudia and I sat on the right side of the long oak table. Across from us, Evelyn and Marcus looked like they were posing for a family Christmas card, matching colors, polite smiles, all for show. But I noticed the way Marcus kept bouncing his leg and how Evelyn's pearl necklace kept slipping sideways on her collarbone. Judge Garvey entered the room at exactly 9:01 a.m. A tall woman in her late 50s. She wore no makeup and had the kind of gaze that silenced entire rooms. "Let's begin," she said, voice calm but curt. Their lawyer, a man named Howell, stood up and launched into his opening. His tone was oily, confident. "Your Honor, we are here today because the family has deep concern for Miss Ellsworth's well-being. Over the past year, she's exhibited erratic behavior, paranoia, and financial recklessness. We fear she is no longer able to manage her affairs in a healthy or safe manner." I almost laughed. He continued, "Statements from her family, particularly her mother and brother, indicate long-standing emotional instability and increasingly impulsive financial decisions." Claudia didn't even flinch. She stood calmly when it was her turn. "Your Honor, not only are these claims unsupported by medical evidence, employment history, or financial records, they're part of a long pattern of emotional abuse, coercion, and manipulation against my client. We intend to prove not only that Naomi Ellsworth is fully competent, but that this petition is an act of retaliation for her refusal to continue financially supporting her family." Judge Garvey nodded slowly. "Then proceed." The first witness called was Marcus. He walked to the stand like he was heading to a bar stool, not a bench. He raised his right hand, swore in, and put on the face he'd always used to get out of trouble. She's been off, he said. Cut us out for no reason. Accused my mom of stealing from her. She once screamed at me because I borrowed her phone charger. She's intense. Always has been. Claudia leaned over and whispered, "Let him dig." When their lawyer asked if I was financially irresponsible, Marcus smirked. She bought a $2,000 couch. Who does that when your family's struggling? Claudia stood. Objection. Her income allows for that purchase, and her family's financial difficulties stem from Marcus's failed business ventures, not my client's spending. Sustained, the judge said. Next came Evelyn. She took the stand in her favorite mauve blouse and a look of maternal concern that would have fooled anyone who hadn't lived with it. She's always been a little fragile, Evelyn said. We've tried to support her, but she pushes everyone away. I just worry she's not okay anymore. Claudia stood again. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Exhibit A. She handed a flash drive to the bailiff, who plugged it into the courtroom system. Audio filled the space, clear, cold, brutal. Marcus. You think you're better than us? You're not. You're just a check with legs. Evelyn. Don't provoke him, Naomi. You know how he gets. The judge's eyes narrowed. Miss Ellsworth, she said to my mother, is that your voice? Evelyn didn't speak. She simply nodded. Do you deny the context? It's complicated. Claudia smiled faintly. We have the full 37-minute recording. Your Honor, would you like to hear it? No, I've heard enough. The judge turned to me. Miss Ellsworth, do you wish to speak? I stood, every nerve in my body humming. For years, I said, I thought I was the problem. I thought I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. But I wasn't. I just didn't fit the version of family they wanted. I took a breath. I've worked since I was 15, paid for my own education, built a career. I never asked them for anything. But the second I stopped paying for everything, suddenly I became unwell. That's not concern. That's control. And I'm done being controlled. The room was silent. Even Marcus had stopped moving. Then Claudia stood again and walked to the judge, holding a sealed envelope. Your Honor, this may change the standing of the petitioners. The judge opened it and read the contents carefully. Her expression shifted. This is a DNA test. Yes, Claudia replied. It confirms that Naomi Ellsworth is not biologically related to Frank Ellsworth. Therefore, the petitioners have no legal standing to claim conservatorship. Evelyn went pale. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. The judge looked at them both. We will reconvene in 3 days. Until then, I'm placing a freeze on all of Miss Ellsworth's accounts. No one touches her finances but her. Bang. Gavel dropped. Court adjourned. Outside, Evelyn grabbed my wrist. What the hell are you doing? I pulled away. You should have left me alone. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said calmly. You did that a long time ago. 3 days. That's how long we had until the final hearing. 3 days to turn a lifetime of gaslighting into irrefutable facts. Claudia and I spent every minute of it holed up in her office, paper spread across the conference table, audio clips playing on loop, old email chains re-examined for hidden threats. Jonah dropped off food I barely remembered eating. I lived on caffeine, adrenaline, and fury. On Thursday morning, Claudia called me into her private office. She had a manila folder in front of her, labeled in black marker, Trust Files Ellsworth, 1996. I pulled this from the courthouse records, she said. Your name was on none of the original filings. I sat across from her, already bracing. She opened the folder. This, she said, tapping a notarized letter, is the original version of your birth certificate, filed in 1992. And this, she flipped the page, is the one submitted in 1996 when your mother had it amended to list Frank Ellsworth as your biological father. I stared at the page, my mouth dry. Why would she do that? Because if Frank was your legal father, Claudia said, you'd qualify as part of the Ellsworth Family Trust. But she pulled out another document, a spreadsheet highlighted in yellow. They never included you. The trust was structured to benefit Marcus exclusively. Evelyn funneled all financial growth from the original inheritance, money from your maternal grandfather, into accounts Marcus could access by age 25. Not a single dollar was allocated to you. I clenched my fists on the table. So they used my name to legitimize access to more money, then shut me out entirely. Exactly, and they thought you'd never notice. I swallowed hard, then asked the question I hadn't dared voice yet. Do you think Frank knew? Claudia paused. I think he didn't want to. That hurt more than I expected. She handed me a new file. This is the original trust agreement. We also have bank statements showing Marcus withdrew over $80,000 in a single year, half of it sent to a shell company, which your mother signed off on as a co-owner. This is fraud, I whispered. Claudia nodded. And now we have the paper trail. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into the guest room at Claudia's house and pulled out the old journal I'd kept in college. I hadn't opened it in years, but something told me there was more. And I found it, tucked between notes on anatomy lectures and work schedules. A printed email from Evelyn, dated May 2013. Subject line, you owe him. Naomi, he's your brother. You can't just leave him like this. We've always been there for you. If you don't co-sign the loan, we'll have to consider other options. Don't make us do that. I remembered that loan. I didn't sign it. But the next week, someone filed a false credit card application in my name. I never could prove who did it, but now, with everything else, it fit perfectly. They'd been planning this for years. Friday morning, we met with Savannah. We found her in a cafe on the edge of downtown. Hood up, sunglasses on, arms crossed. You're sure I won't get pulled into court? She asked, her voice sharp but unsure. You're not the one being investigated, Claudia said calmly. But your story helps establish a pattern. That's all we need. I pulled out a flash drive and handed it to Claudia. Savannah leaned in. Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Remember when Marcus went off on you after you got that promotion? I nodded. He yelled. Mom told me I was overreacting. Yeah, what you don't know is my phone was in the baby's room. The baby monitor picked up the whole thing, audio and everything. My breath caught. You kept it. Of course I did, she said. I knew one day you'd need it. That afternoon, we sat in Claudia's office and played it together. Marcus yelling, You think a job makes you better than us? You're nothing, Naomi. Nothing. Evelyn, let him say his piece. Don't provoke him. Me off in the background. This is abuse. This is insane. Marcus, you haven't seen insane yet. Claudia didn't flinch. This goes to the judge. I stared at the screen, then back at Claudia. They've been laying this trap since I was a teenager. No, she corrected gently. They were counting on you never standing up. And now I was. The courtroom was full by 8:45 a.m. Word had gotten out. Maybe it was Savannah's cryptic tweet the night before. Tomorrow, truth has a microphone. Maybe people just sensed what was coming. Whatever the reason, every bench was taken. Reporters, former neighbors, strangers who'd heard whispers of the Ellsworth family unraveling. Claudia and I walked in through the side entrance. She looked sharp as ever in a charcoal blazer. I wore no makeup, just clean lines, clear eyes, and the calm of someone who'd already survived the worst. Judge Garvey entered promptly at 9 o'clock. Everyone stood. She sat without ceremony. Ms. Mercer, she said, please proceed. Claudia stood. Your Honor, we'd like to call Savannah Riley to the stand. Gasps rippled through the room. Evelyn's face went sheet white. Savannah walked up slowly but steady, swore in, and sat tall. Miss Riley, Claudia began, How long were you involved with Marcus Ellsworth? 3 years, Savannah said. On and off. Mostly off. A few people chuckled softly. Can you describe the relationship between Marcus and his family? Savannah nodded. They protected him, enabled him. Any mistake he made, they found a way to blame Naomi. Evelyn especially. It was like they needed her to be the villain, so Marcus could keep being their golden boy. Claudia handed Savannah a small digital recorder. Do you recognize this? Savannah pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the courtroom. She thinks she's better than me. That money should have been mine. I swear to God, if she doesn't give it up, I'll make her life hell. She won't even see it coming. Judge Garvey didn't blink. She simply said, When was that recorded? Savannah looked up. 1 year ago. He didn't know the baby monitor was still on. And did Evelyn ever participate in or condone financial misconduct? Yes, Savannah said. Marcus opened a credit card in my name. When I confronted Evelyn, she said it was just paperwork, and I was being dramatic. Judge Garvey turned to Evelyn. Mrs. Ellsworth, did you instruct your son to use this woman's identity for financial gain? Evelyn didn't answer. Mrs. Ellsworth. I don't recall that exact conversation, she muttered. Noted, the judge said sharply. Next, Claudia called Nico to the stand. He walked up, opened his laptop, and said, Your Honor, I've been assisting Naomi in compiling documentation. During that process, I discovered this. He clicked a few keys. This is a transaction log from the Ellsworth family trust account. He zoomed in. Here we see a $15,000 transfer made by Marcus to a non-existent LLC. And here, he clicked again, we trace the routing number back to an account Evelyn co-owns. It's textbook fraud. Evelyn stood. This is a setup. She's always hated us. Sit down, Mrs. Ellsworth, the judge ordered, or I will hold you in contempt. Evelyn slowly sat. Claudia stood once more. Your Honor, in addition to the fraud, we have another development. She held up a white envelope. DNA results. Verified by an independent lab. Chain of custody maintained. The judge opened the results, scanned them, and looked up at me. Then Evelyn. Then Frank. According to this test, Naomi Ellsworth is not the biological daughter of Frank Ellsworth. Dead silence. So, the judge said, turning to Claudia, the petitioners have no legal standing as guardians or family trustees. Claudia nodded. Correct. Furthermore, they falsified a birth certificate in 1996 to manipulate trust eligibility. Frank finally spoke. You told me she was mine, he whispered, staring at Evelyn. I did what I had to do, she snapped. You said you didn't want to know. You made me lie to a child, he said, voice shaking. I loved her. Then you should have acted like it, I said coldly. Judge Garvey raised her gavel. The court finds the petitioners acted in bad faith. The conservatorship petition is dismissed with prejudice. All financial access to Miss Ellsworth's assets is permanently revoked. This matter is referred to the district attorney's office for further investigation into identity theft, financial fraud, and perjury. She banged the gavel. Court adjourned. Outside, reporters swarmed. Microphones in my face. Cameras everywhere. Naomi, do you have a comment? Are you pressing charges? Is it true you're not an Ellsworth? I held up my hand. No comment. Claudia guided me through the crowd like a bodyguard. I could hear Evelyn screaming behind us. I never turned around. In the parking lot, Marcus cornered me. You think you won, he hissed. I didn't win, I said. You lost. You ruined everything. No, I said. I exposed everything. You ruined it all on your own. He stepped forward, but Claudia appeared beside me like a shadow. Step back, Marcus, while you still can. He backed off, trembling with rage. That night, we sat on Claudia's balcony with a bottle of wine between us. To the end of the worst chapter, she said. To the beginning of the next, I replied. She slid a folder toward me. This is everything the court awarded. Damages, restitution, and an apology letter from the state for allowing the petition to move forward in the first place. I flipped through it, stunned. This is a lot, I whispered. You earn every cent. I looked up. Why did you really help me? Claudia smiled faintly. Because they tried to erase me once too. And I swore no one would do that to someone I loved again. 2 weeks after the ruling, I stood in line at the county clerk's office with a folder under my arm and a name in my heart. The woman at the counter asked if I was certain. Yes, I said without flinching. It's not about erasing the past. It's about refusing to let it define me. I signed the documents. Naomi Whitaker, my mother's maiden name. The one they buried so deep they hoped I'd never find it. But I did, and now it was mine. That evening, Claudia and I met Nico at a quiet Italian place outside town. No headlines, no press, just laughter, good pasta, and 3 people who'd crawled through hell together and made it out alive. You should write about this, Nico said between bites of gnocchi. Like really write. I smirked. You mean a revenge memoir? No, Claudia said. A truth memoir. I thought about it. The idea sat heavy and bright in my chest. Maybe one day. The next morning, I drove alone. No music, no phone. Just the sound of the tires humming against the road and the wind through the windows. The sky was heavy with early October clouds, gray and soft like a wool coat. The cemetery sat on the edge of Windermere. Old oak trees swayed quietly above the stones. I found the grave easily, tucked between a broken fence and a row of marigolds someone still bothered to water. Thomas Whitaker, 1965, 2000 beloved son, loyal friend, missed always. I crouched and placed a small envelope at the base of the stone. Inside was the DNA result. Not because he needed proof, but because I did. I don't know if you ever knew about me, I whispered, but I know about you now. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the trees like distant applause. I'm not here for closure, I added. I'm just here. Footsteps crunched behind me. I turned. Claudia stood there, holding 2 coffee cups. You didn't think I'd let you do this alone, did you? She handed me one and sat beside me in silence. We sipped side by side until the sun slipped through the clouds for a few seconds, just enough to cast gold on the name carved in stone. Later that week, I sorted through the last boxes in my apartment. Not moving boxes, just the ones full of old weight. Photos I'd pretended mattered. Journals I'd kept through college. Printouts of emails where I tried so hard to make them love me. All of it shredded, recycled, donated, let go. Nico helped haul it all out to the curb. So what now? I start the scholarship paperwork, I said, under Thomas's name, for kids like me, kids who were invisible in their own homes. He paused. He would have liked that. You think he would have liked me? Nico didn't hesitate. He would have been proud. The last time I saw Evelyn was in the parking lot of the Winn-Dixie on Maple Avenue. I was putting groceries in my car. She was sitting in hers, staring at the steering wheel like she'd forgotten what it was for. When she saw me, she rolled down the window. Naomi. I paused. She looked older, but not from time, from truth, from exposure. I didn't know how to love you, she said quietly. I stepped closer, but kept my hands at my sides. I know. I thought if I kept you small, I could keep you safe. You weren't keeping me safe, I said. You were keeping me controllable. Tears welled in her eyes. Do you hate me? I looked her in the eye. No. Relief spread across her face. But I don't forgive you either. She flinched. Not yet, I added. She nodded. I don't expect you to. I turned and walked away. She didn't stop me. That night, I sat on Claudia's balcony as the city lights blinked below. The autumn breeze carried something new, cleaner, quieter. Not peace exactly, but the road toward it. Claudia poured 2 glasses